Great. So welcome back to the start. You guys. My name is Sharice Person. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Hispanic Serving Institution Initiatives Director. A few things I want to do to start out. As folks know, we brought this series back this year. I want to give a huge thanks to our planning committee, Angel Dominguez, Elena, and our student interns who are also here, as well as Maria, who's on the call, monitoring the chat. So thank you all. And thank you everybody who's been coming. Like I said, we've been really excited about the turnout and how much you all are excited about the HSI equity class. Thinking about topics that are relevant to UCSC as a Hispanic serving institution, and really engaging campuses or speakers across campus to really critically engage with these talks and think together about topics that center on the practices of equity and servingness. So we had originally thought that this was going to be our last talk. And we actually are so excited that we're going to actually host one more at the end of the quarter. It's going to be week 10. And we're going to be joined by a team of undergraduate research scholars led by Professor Rubius. So we'll be announcing that, putting that out there. But no, we actually have one more. So we're really excited about that. So I get the pleasure to introduce such a wonderful colleague, Dr. Ebonee Williams. So Ebonee has come into what we all know has really been such a great team that UCSC has had that predates me, that is probably 15, 20 years in making, and really the servingness that we have as our roots at UC Santa Cruz goes back way before that, right? We have really been doing a lot of servingness as individuals, as departments, as different things on our campus. But when Ebonee came in, it was May of 2022. We were submitting the Seal of Excellencia. We were submitting a grant, and she came in and hit the ground running. She's like, "What can I do?" And I'm like, "Well, let's read the Seal of Excellencia." And she was in there and she was making comments and, again, very respectful of our work and also really encouraging us to think about ourselves and help us to hold that mirror up to ourselves and that practice of reflection. And so I really just want to say, Ebonee rolled up her sleeves and just said, "Let's get to work." And since that day, she's been a can't stop, won't stop, leading with her head and her heart. And I just want to say how much it is of a pleasure to get to work on your team, Ebonee. And with that, I'm just going to give it on over to you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Hi, everyone in person and online. Give me a second to get my screen shared and not leave the meeting. And we've all done this, and for some reason when you do it, it's like, how do you do that again? So just give me a moment to get us situated. All right, so people in the room should see slides, and people at home should see me and slides. Well, you guys just see me inside. This is so weird. It's gonna sound bad. It's weird because I can't see what's going on. So I'm scared just like looking up my nose. So hi, thank you, Sharice, for that really warm welcome. Thank you all for taking time to be here, given everything that's happening on our campus. My name is Dr. Ebonee Williams, she, her pronouns. Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Success and Equity, but for the sake of this talk, human colleague interested in ensuring that the work that we do together is from a place of contextual relevance that leads to a place of care, because I don't believe you can do equity work without remembering that we're all humans first and showing empathy. So before I get started, I'm not going to do a traditional land acknowledgement, but I am going to ask everyone to just take a breath or two and ground yourself in the space and the ground that you're in. Release what you need to release, absorb what you need to absorb, and understand that all the lands that we reside on were occupied and continue to be stewarded and maintained by individuals we will never meet in the physical world. They have passed on, but their energy remains, and we benefit from their work, their generosity, and sometimes their pain. Some of their exile, some of their deaths. And by honoring the human experience, we have a space of honoring ourselves and them, as well as the land we sit on. I know here, we're on the Ebonee, if you're in this room, a Waswas stewarded space. But some of us have heritage past that. You know, my partner is part of the Guligichi, which is an African native tribe that still has contracts with the Americas, right? And they're on the eastern coast. So there's a lot of connection to that space, and I really want to honor that connected to the HSI work. So some of our natives of Northern America, or what we consider America, moved to what's considered Mexico. So there's a lot of connection and heritage, and I encourage you to learn that space. With that, I'm gonna get my talk started. And again, thank you for being here. I am not monitoring the chat, so Charis and Angel, I'll be looking at y'all to be my support. And I love that. So I'm starting my day with student success definition that I'm so proud of, that our SSE leadership team, shout out to all of you who are in the room and contributed. Our larger team of directors contributed. So regardless of their entry point, each individual is entitled to transformative experiences. Students have the opportunity, privilege, and access to engage in learning and unlearning various definitions of achievement. We are responsible for creating the conditions for students to achieve their self-determined goals, experience validation, develop as contributing members of community, and expand their possibilities. I don't care where you sit in this institution, you should be able to connect to some part, if not all of this. And I think for the first 3 months I read this, I had literal chills come down my spine. But as you know, creating something that aligns with everyone doesn't always work. So I'm going to start my talk with highlighting where we got some pushback. So the word entitled. We're like, why y'all put entitled in there? Privilege? We not privileged? What are you talking about? And self-determined? Well, how are they going to determine things they're unaware of? So I'm going to break those down a little bit. And if you have a reaction to them, please hold those reactions and think about it. Please hold on to what you're feeling with this definition. And we're going to talk a little bit, okay? With that, I'm laughing because I'm co-host. I can see when people are entering. This is hilarious. You late? I saw you. I had to. It's too much fun. If you don't know me, you're getting to know me now, okay? So entitled. I want you to focus on the second definition because that's where I feel like most people who push back on us were coming from. When we talk to faculty, feeling like people are entitled to A's, entitled to passing, entitled to all the flexibility. When I talk to other individuals, they're like, what do you mean entitled? We minority, we rope by rope. There's no entitlement in our space, right? But when you read the first definition, it's aligned with the rights and access to this education. Our country was built on the idea that we would be educated and that we would have free educational system because that was what's seen as the prosperity of our country. So what does it mean for the people who are considered citizens and a part of this country, citizens and non-citizens who contribute to this country, to not have access to education? So that's the entitled that my team got very excited about. We're like, we're not moving it because they're entitled, okay? Then you go to the next piece, which you see there's another, what just happened? Okay, don't do this to me. There we go, no, wrong way, okay. All right, we're back in. Privilege. Some of you may or may not know this beautiful individual that's here, Nelson Mandela, but hopefully you can read the quote to yourself. I'll read it out loud, right? It's not beyond our power to create a world in which all children have access to good education. And a lot of us who choose to work in these institutions and places believe in this. And sometimes we need to be reminded of it because our daily work may pull us in different directions. But when we think about privilege and that entitled space is who's here and who has access. We also, I'd like to honor someone who's a first gen individual and just connected with a lot of my friends from high school who also had similar access as me, but also had similar upbringing as me. we all felt privileged to be getting the education we were getting and getting the growth and development and opportunities that were there. And we felt like it was our job to go back and ensure our cousins, our siblings, our neighbor also had access or had a way forward and saw those options. And for me, that's vetted in this entitled and privileged space. So self-determination. When you look here, I put this slide up because I like it. Talks about deciding, believing, and acting. You can read those pieces if you'd like. But I really want to take a moment to think about the places where, if you look at the different identities of our students, self-determined had to stay in there, because when I think of certain demographics within our group, and I'll name some of them out of respect for the people who I think were okay with me naming, but if your family has determined everything for your life up until you get to college, what does it mean for you to not follow what they expect of you? What does it mean for you to explore something you haven't seen before and to choose that powerfully, right? There's some African proverbs that talk about choosing your own identity. I have it written here. I'll see if I feel like reading it. To define ourselves for ourselves, right? And to speak for ourselves when the ability to do that historically has been taken away from us. So when you haven't had the chance to say who you want to be, to stand in your existence and be fully expressed, this self-determination is a part of that. When I think about African, well, I just talked about the African community, but Asian American students talk about all the time feeling like they only can choose between 3 to 4 careers. And there's so many more opportunities. Several of you who know me, those of you who are meeting me for the first time, I can't believe any on this call have not met me already, but if you are, hi. My background's engineering, and I get asked often, and I'm chemical engineering, would you go back and do the same thing? I absolutely love that I'm a chemical engineer. I can tell you every day how I use my chemical engineering every day of my life, and it shapes how I think. But if I, as a first-gen person from a low income, as we defined it in higher education, I didn't know I was low income until y'all told me, okay? I'm an architect. I'm an equal left brain, right brain person. That sounds like I could use math, I could draw on stuff. But as a first-gen person, if I don't know about it, what does that mean? So some people push back on, like, how do people who don't have access to seeing the wide variety of what we can provide with our higher education choose something that they don't know? So when I look back to our definition and think about what can be learned and unlearned, being self-determined, it's our job to give them more options, more access, and more possibilities. And so they can be in a position to say, I'm choosing powerfully that I want to be, right? The background of engineering, I love talking to non-engineering students, and they're like, I can't work at Google. I was like, why not? It's a miniature city. They need people who write well. They need people who do social media. They need people to help people manage people. They need every major that we have on this campus to do their business. Yet we don't talk about that in that way. And so when we talk about self-determination, that's what I'm hoping you're hearing. This slide is to represent the beautiful array of diaspora of students we serve, and particular student success and equity. This is highlighting some of your work, but also all of us, these are all of our students. So what does it mean when you think about context is everything in student success? When you plan a program, when you think about how you're speaking to individuals, are you thinking about their lived experience? What does it mean for them to step through the world, right? I'm hoping you've seen some transfer, foster, students that you maybe consider minorities, students who've been system impacted, students who are stressed, right? They're coming from different environments, and there's a wide variety of students that we serve. And so often it's easy to create work from our own context, but context is everything. If we're really trying to make large impact, if you're only creating from your own context, you're only changing those of you who are you. And I love asking this question. So I want all of you to answer this for yourself. Don't say it out loud. Do you want to date and live with you? Most people choose not to, because you know those details of yourself. That does not mean you don't love yourself, right? I am not saying don't love yourself. But I don't want to argue with me every day, okay? I don't want to hold me responsible for taking out the trash or washing the dishes because I don't want to, right? So what does it look like, even in your own lived experience of your friends, if they're not just like you, what have you opened yourself up to? How did you open yourself up to that, and what does that look like? I'm gonna talk a little about what I think that was, but I want you to start thinking about that. And a group of students that's not represented here is our disability students and people who have different ways of learning, right? So this is one of my favorite graphs of all time to share, okay? And I think the pie is too big. The slices of pie should be way smaller. This circle represents all knowledge. It's what you know, okay? What you know, you know. Some of you know the square root of pi, okay, I'm being silly, okay? Some of you know how HBO operates, Then there's the stuff you know you don't know. I don't know what's happening in front of H right now, but I know there's stuff happening. Right? But I don't know, right? But then there's the stuff you don't know you don't know. So when you have an interaction and something happens or you're not sure what's going on, you just don't know what you don't know. So this student in the yellow for me represents any one of our students, and they're being tugged on possibly by their family. They're trying to understand how to graduate. They're having financial stress. And the butterfly for me represents those things that are just unknown. So for every person we run into, how much we don't know on why they're reacting the way they're reacting, what they're managing or holding, and how to not take it personally, that's a lot. But this is why context is everything. Because when we make assumptions based on what we assume, we are not allowing ourselves the opportunity to really meet people where they are and be connected. All right, well, I hope that's resonating, though what you don't know, you don't know. So the next slide is not something you need to see, so I'm gonna tell a story, okay? You still can hear me? Wi-Fi went out here, great. But y'all can hear me, right?
Yep.
All right, so let's talk about it. I already disclosed one of my secrets, I'm an engineer. And one of the stories that I like to tell is the design of the airbag. So the story I heard from a company was that there were 4 engineers set out to do this design. All right, they're all engineers, we already have a problem, but they had 4 different disciplines. So they had different thought areas, right? They designed the first airbag and it killed anyone under 250 pounds and under 6'5". What level of diversity did we miss?
Everybody else.
Everybody else.
Very high.
All of the engineers in the room were above 6'2". And they were all over 250 pounds. So they did the right thing from a diversity perspective of including different thoughts. We had mechanical, we had electrical, we had other engineers in the room. But we missed the physical diversity needed to ensure that children were safe, to ensure women were safe, to ensure anyone who just isn't a giant, right, was safe. So the next thing I lead to with this is I want everyone to take a moment and talk about what comes to mind when you hear the word diversity. For those of you online, you're welcome to put it on the chat. For y'all in the room, hold it for now. Just think about it. What comes to mind when you hear the word diversity? Anything happening in the chat yet? No. Inclusivity. Thank you, Leah. Anybody in the room? Okay. Many different types, everyone, synergy, potential. Feel like I can try to log back in.
Hot mess. Yes. Yeah.
I don't know who put hot mess, but you're popular right now. That's funny. Anybody in the room want to share anything?
I think about the civil rights history
Mm.
there and where the whole notion of diversity even came from.
Understood.
When I think about diversity, I think about
working in admissions and our comprehensive review process, which takes into account people's different lived experiences and histories, along with some of the other things that have been mentioned in the chat. Because we're more than just how we show up physically.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So as a visibly identified Black woman, so I visibly show up as a woman by societal standards, I am Black. I always get nervous when I have to have this conversation, and that's why I told the story first. Because when I want to talk about diversity, I get the oh, she's gonna talk about slavery. And she's gonna talk about how Black people need stuff. She's gonna talk about how women are oppressed. Those are all true. So deal with it. And there's other layers of diversity. There's diversity of thought. There's diversity in size. There's diversity in experience. So when we really are talking about diversity, what does it mean? And the reason I like to tell the airbag story is because it doesn't have to do with race. It doesn't have to, well, it kind of has to do with gender, but we're not there yet. But it has other layers of context with it. And so as we think about diversity, I love sharing this slide. This is a slide I created some time ago. This tells you a lot about me, and I don't have to say anything, right? You can find out where I'm from. You can find out what I majored in. You can find out why some of us have had great debates with me, right? Some of you know I speak French, played basketball. I learned I can't play anymore. Some of you know I sprained my ankle, right? So if you are not a Black woman from Oakland, California with an engineering degree, you might have another way of connecting with me. So how do we get past the visual to get to another layer of connection? What does that look like? And how do we get there? I've worn glasses most of my life, so I recognize people in the room who have on glasses. I'm wearing blue. I look for people who have blue on, right? My hair's in a ponytail. Hair's in a ponytail, right? I know my people who are on groups or programs. I know who teaches in the room. There are connections to different aspects of me that allow me to build connections with people online. And look at my slides went out again. That's great. I don't know what's going on there. You're back? Oh, okay. I looked over and it was black, so I don't know. And I'm not talking about me black. Okay, we're done. And so I want us to be empathetic with ourselves in the sense that the human experience has allowed for us to connect, has allowed for us to survive for centuries because we find things that look like us. That is a normal mechanism of survival. It can be an inhibitor to our connection because we've layered on this discrimination that can happen based on some of the visual things that have been there, but we all do it. There's no one that doesn't first look for things that look like them to decide if they're safe. And when I say look like you, I mean your family, I mean your neighbor, I mean the things that you know create safety for you. So I challenge you to be aware of that as you look to create connection with people. And how do you get past that, right? I think about, I'm looking at some of the faculty in here and online is, how do you find out things about your students in your class so you can develop connections and find out if the examples you give work? For my staff that does programming, same thing. What are the demographics that you're paying attention to? And I hear people like, oh, diversity, it's so much work. What if you did it twice in a quarter? What if you did it once? One of my favorite pieces of advice that you did not ask for is not allowing for people to create their own teams. Raise your hand if you've, in your life, only worked on teams you've created. There's always someone in there you didn't pick. I'm not saying you didn't like them, but I'm just saying you didn't pick them. So if we're preparing these students for life, how are we ensuring that they have the skills to navigate in a way that's successful? Context, again, is everything. So one of the ways we do this is values. What are your core values? How do you find the core values of the people you work with? How do you look for those core values? What does that look like? My core values are hidden in this graph. And if you know me, all of these should resonate for you. I enjoy having fun. Tried to crack a few jokes today. You may or may not laugh. I'm a very direct communicator, which sometimes serves me, sometimes doesn't. And I'm extremely passionate about the things that I'm passionate about. This picture shows all other types of values. I think I align with most of them, it's probably why I liked it. But what are your values? What's important to you? And then how do you share that with others so they know how to connect with you outside of just what they see, what they've assumed? And we make assumptions for space of safety. So how do you let people know they're safe and that they can go deeper? What does that look like? So that leads me to servingness, forms of care. When you look at some of the pictures that I have here, is it obvious what they might need? Or what you might want to do to them, right? I mean, if you don't want to give that guy some water, I don't know about you. There's a jacket you want to give, right? I want to go celebrate with Black Man. I'm like, what are we happy about, right? What are you doing, right? And you want to just go hug the lady with the hands up here, right? So when I think about student-centered work, one of my passions in this, and context being everything, is how do you anticipate the needs of your students? I keep telling my team about week 2 or 3, that's the first stress points that students experience in a quarter. Then we know from week 4 to almost 7, they're in some form of test in one of their class or another. Then we know that there's finals. And I don't know, they're humans. Parents pass away, people get sick, they break up with someone. There's just stuff that happens. But when I'm thinking about preparing someone who has no college context, what is it that you're doing to create a context for college for them? My favorite conversation is office hours, or asking them, are they first gen? They're like, I don't know what that means. I have a grandmother and I have a grandfather. I've been in the country for years. What do you mean by first gen? That is a term we use. They don't know what we're talking about. So collecting data from students and not giving context and speaking to their language, and something I've tried to avoid, but I'm gonna start saying, is meet them where they are. What does that mean? Okay. So anticipated need, clear pathways, right? What does it look like to say, when you come meet with me, these are the 3 things you could ask. I don't care if you're an advisor, I don't care if you're a teacher, I don't care if you're a mentor. I want you to meet with me and this is what I'd like you to talk about, right? Representation matters. One of my best friends is a 6'5" man from Scotland. We look nothing alike, yet when we're in a meeting, they're like, those 2. Literally, those 2, right? But how do you ensure that you're telling stories that are relevant to the people in the room? Every story won't meet everyone, but are you thinking about some? What data are you looking at? How are you informing that? What are the examples you give? How are you making those connections? And for me, sense of belonging is equal to validation. And validation is saying, though you flunked the first midterm, I still could see you as an engineer. Though you didn't write that paper right, you still can be a psychologist. Though you didn't understand the concept of this art assignment, we still think there's a lane for you. And who you are when you reach out matters. So, my form of care is a first gen, just put all the labels y'all put on me, because I don't put these. First gen, low income, inner city kid who went to a small private institution. And I know we're a public institution. The love and care that I received at that space was, I don't know the names of the people who took care of me. I just knew I was taken care of. I knew someone was checking to see if I was in class. I knew that they were having these events with food, and I'd see someone walk around with a little, yeah, okay, I see them. Never said a word to me. So what does it look like to provide the water to someone without them needing to ask you? What does it look like to provide the jacket? What does it look like to give a hug What does it look like to see someone celebrating and be like, yeah, celebrating? Those are the ways we anticipate care. That's how we do connection. And that's what I want to leave with you on that slide. Anyone want to guess what this is? They're rules. Goal. No, you can't. The golden rule.
Golden rule and the platinum rule.
Yes. What's the golden rule? Anybody?
Treat others how you would like to be treated.
All right. A+ for the platinum rule. Who's got it?
Treat others how they would like to be treated.
Exactly. What an amazing concept, right? And what I like about this is one is you-centered. One centers others. And so remembering that it's important for you to first think if you like how you're treating someone, that is important for you to think about. Because if you don't like what you're doing, does that work? But the next step is it being received by them? Sender, receiver. I am trying to show you care. Are you receiving it? How else do I need to show up for you? But that leads me right into this. If you've been around SSE, if you've been around HSI, if you've been around our campus, we've been pushing this ecological validation model. Why have we been pushing it? Because it feels caring to us. When you do your work, are you centering your office? Are you centering your expertise? Are you centering the student experience? Ecological validation model likes to say, if we are here with our students in the middle, what does it look like for us to be partnering and creating connections in ways that we haven't created before? If you are a faculty member who sees a student in distress, do you know who your staff counterpart is to work with? If you're a staff member who sees a student in distress and it's around a class, do you know who to talk to? If it's not around a class, do you know who to talk to? What does that look like? And how do we have individuals who can be experiencing trauma already not have to explain their circumstance at all times? So I go to Angel and I'm like, Angel, someone just stole my Hello Kitty. And I'm really sad about it, right? And Angel's like, I get that you're crying, but you need to go talk to Shars. And I go, cool, hey Shars, I'm devastated. And Shars goes, what's going on? Angel didn't tell you? No. They stole my Hello Kitty. Don't ask me why I picked Hello Kitty. It's irrelevant what is making me sad. And Shars goes, oh, I'm sorry to hear you. Here's some water. But now you have to go see someone else. So there's campuses who've adopted the policy called no wrong door. And what would that look like? That I come to a tutoring session and I still can get answers around other pieces of my life. I've come to an advising session and I still can get answers. And it's not on you, the person who's in front, to answer, but to have a trusted relationship and clarity on what others are doing on the campus. So when this is implemented clearly, it's student-centered, right? Sorry, I need to read. There we go. It can provide new collaboration spaces. I love the idea of a shared understanding. And I want everyone to take a moment and breathe. Everyone take a deep breath. This should not be more work. This is the work of our work. We are here together to usher students through an experience. And how do we do that in a collaboration? Shouldn't be additional work. It's additional understanding, it's additional agreements, and it's aligning ourselves in values and commitments. I was just talking to Shars about their commitment to see 90% of our Latinx students retained and graduated. Who couldn't be excited about that goal? What does it look like for us to get behind it? The grants that have been written with that in mind. So let's do some trainings. Let's do some developments. Get data access. Let's talk about how you evaluate that data. And let's empower others to be able to talk about that without needing us to be the center, because we want to see the cultural change. That's what happens through this model. There's collective learning, there's a potential for deep impact, new opportunities, agility and flexibility. What I want you to know is that you already are displaying agility and flexibility. We have to do it all the time in higher education. So what does it look like to do it together? Shouldn't be like, oh man, we have to do it together. No, there should be a thrill and an excitement to know that you're not walking the walk alone. We're walking together. Evolve proactively, adapt to changing circumstances. Those are the things that I think are available to us when we think about student success through this lens, layering on care and paying attention to context. You can put my clicker down. Oh man, we're just having a day. Really?
It frees up again.
Uh-huh. Oh my, this is fun. I think I know why, but that's okay. I hope everyone in the chat is doing well. We just want to make sure you're awake, okay? All right. Context is everything. And when I think about cultural alignment, we are a research one institution who is designated as a minority serving institution. And what does it mean to align our cultures together? We're not going to stop being a research one institution. We're not going to stop being a minority serving institution, which is a public institution that's dedicated to serving the people who live in California. And so what do those pieces look like? I don't know, some of you can't read it back there. So like there's rituals of engagement. How do you create trusted spaces? There's complexity and experiential work that needs to happen. Minutes of the day, but like really looking at the trajectory of how that happens. And it's so exciting to have people who are partnering in that, but we also need you to be thinking about that. Part of that is also thinking about data. This is our current student enrollments based on IRAPs. So it may have been, I don't know what the last date was, but I just pulled it, right? When preparing this deck. Do you know who's in your class? Do you know who said they want to be in your major? Did they make it there? Do you know who's in your college? Do you know who's staying in your res hall? Do you know what city they came from? Right? Do you know how many international students you have in that space? All of that matters. When we look at our faculty population and spend long-term in this country, that a certain number of our faculty are international. So what does it mean to be a faculty member raised in another country, to come to this country and connect with majority American student population and understand their history, their context, and their culture? And what is the work that you're doing to do that? So one side is to say, why are they asking this? The other side is saying, why haven't you asked? What are they trying to say? And that's part of the context is everything, cultural alignment and data being so important in the work that we do. I wrote notes for myself. I ain't paying no attention to any of these notes. So 36.7% of our students are first gen, 47.1% are women. And then is there anything? No, I said everything else. I think the only other things I'll say is connection is necessary. And the other piece of this cultural alignment is if you want people to be connected to your major, how do they start to develop a major identity? And are you adopting your curriculum, your work to have them see themselves as a part of that work? I love that there's a faculty member here who does game design and is like, I am a woman in this space and we look at the world differently. I can't tell you how many women engineers who are like, I'm leaving because this isn't the way I want the culture to be. And I said, well, if you leave, the culture won't change. So can you please start your own company? Because I'd like to work for you, right? And what does that look like? So a moment of reflection. I've been talking at you for a while. I'm almost done, just contextually. But what does it mean to be a minority serving institution? What does that mean to you? We got the designation because the education department gave us the ANAPZ and HSI titles, but we also have ABC students and Native American students here. We have international students here. So what does it mean that it's not what's perceived as dominant culture. How do you account for that? One of the beautiful pride moments of looking at the HSI work is none of the grants were done just to enhance Latinx experiences. Latinx students were used as a measure to decide how we could better serve our student population, period. With an emphasis to see that improved for them and meet the campus compact goals of zero equity gap. So I challenge you to think through what that means for you, and remember that our minority serving institution includes more than 1 or 2 designations.
Mhm.
So as we wrap ourselves up in this talk, student success, context is everything. I'm going to leave you with a few pieces of advice and guidance. What I hope you've heard so far is without context, there's no way to make connection, and you won't evaluate what you've done for the betterment of what we say we're here to do, which is educate our population. So, student engagement. How do you get student feedback is a question. Do students have to tell you they are stressed? Are you telling me you can't tell when somebody's stressed? I believe that you can. So what does it look like to serve them under those circumstances? What are some indicators that you can set it up for yourself, and what are the frequencies? What I'm saying there is, in the context that you run into students, how do you check to see if they're doing okay? And I want to remind you, you don't have to do that every time you see them. Some people have that capacity, but if you're not doing it at all, I'm concerned, okay? What data are you monitoring? What data are you collecting? What data are you sharing? And who are you partnering with? Are students a part of your search committees? Do they get to chime in on who would serve students in the future? So suggestions I have, when you're asking for feedback from anybody, but students in particular, come up with a couple solutions for them to pick from. The most stressful thing you can do to someone already in stress is be like, what do you need? You just saw them, they needed water. They needed a jacket. They needed a hug. Provide what you're comfortable with, but don't ask them what they need. And when you share the solution, I notice that this may be a challenge for you and maybe your friends. And I think that I'm going to try to do this. Will this relieve or solve this problem? If they say no, they get to react to something versus having to create it. Imposter syndrome, how you use language. I didn't know it was first gen until y'all told, right? I didn't experience real bouts of racism until I got into college. So some people don't experience that, and the first time they experience it is here. I used to teach intergroup dialogue for years, and 100% of the class said that our campuses were less diverse than their high schools. So what does it mean for us to not push forward the you don't belong or it's only for method? And how are we phrasing that? Oh, you're a Latinx student? I heard it's rough for you out here. No, hi, I'm happy to see you. I'm excited about serving students who may show up in your identity, and here's some things that I'm doing. Would that work for you? So the language you use for grants is not the same language you should be using to students or around students to get comfortable around the students that work for us, and they pick that up and absorb that. And you could be creating imposter syndrome when you didn't mean to. If you see another human in stress, I ask that you ask one of these 4, all of these questions, especially a student, right? Did you go to class? Have you slept? Have you eaten? That doesn't mean you need to provide the food. Most of them have meal plans or away. Some of them don't, and then you can, but like asking the question may get them back into a space of knowing how to take care of their basic needs. Do you need me to contact someone on your behalf? Because you don't have to be the center of it, but not doing anything is a challenge. How many people during experiences for my community were like, well, I don't know, I'm not Black, I don't know what to do. I was like, if someone was hurt, would you know what to do? They're hurt. How do you show up and what works and feels comfortable to you? Test your solution. going back to the different demographics of students and populations, we always think about our own story, but who else are you considering when you solve a challenge or a problem? So as you come up and design a solution in collaboration space, come up with 5 student profiles and test it through your system. Are there any barriers that show up? Did you achieve your goal? Who are any of the people you may need to partner with? So again, if you take any one of these demographics, create your own demographics. Will a transfer student step through your process well? Will a student with disability step through your process? Will someone who has been system impacted step through your process? What does that look like? I had to throw this in here. I won't speak it through it all, but this is the process that I just described, right? Find out what's going on, research it, imagine a solution, make a plan, create a prototype, and test your prototype. I'm asking you to test your prototype with different student profiles and then improve upon your design if you find something flawed. Oops. Last bit of tips. Be a caring human. You showed up here, so I feel cared for. I ask that you share that care with your students. Anticipate needs, growth, and opportunity are all things that we can do. Show empathy. You can make impact. You have agency and power. There's things that are directly in your control that you have to ask no one else to do, and you can partner with people without asking for permission. So there are things that you can powerfully move in that will make powerful impacts to our students' life and their success. And you can find common ground through values, shared experiences, shared understanding. I end my talk with, regardless of their entry point, each individual is entitled to transformative experiences. Students have the opportunity, privilege, and access to engage in learning and unlearning the various definitions of achievement. We are responsible for creating the conditions for students to achieve their self-determined goals, experience validation, develop as contributing members of community, and expand their possibilities. With that, I thank you, and I will take questions.